Guess who's bipolar? Type 2. It's me. It's your boy, Isaiah, maybe. No. Hi. I just got off the phone with a psychiatrist after going through the process, having like two different therapy intake appointments, and talking to the psychiatrist for like 20 minutes. He agrees I am bipolar type 2, and I am being given medication to pick up tomorrow that's going to actually try and even out the overthinking, which is huge because I was like, it's going to help with the overthinking for like the anxiety too, just not the hypomania, right? And he's like, yes. And I was like, oh shit, I'm going to actually be able to not overthink everything. That's going to be amazing. So that's me today. Um, I wasn't going to spend the start of the episode talking about this, but I got too excited. I actually found a fantastic Today I Fucked Up from the subreddit of the same name, and I have to read it to you and then tell you about some of the responses I got from people because it is too funny not to share. So, first, let's read it, and I want to warn you, it's a little long. It's titled, Today I Fuck Up by Being an Asshole to My Best Customer. So this happened a couple years ago, pre-pandemic. I owned a book and game store in a metropolitan area, and I'd been there for several years. As with any place of business, you get your regulars. I had two employees that worked for me, one of which was a young lady that had worked with one of my regular customers from the area. Now, this regular customer, we'll call him Mr. M, or, side note for me, I call him Mr. Magic, because why not? Mr. Magic typically came in on the weekends when I wasn't there, but every once in a while he'd come in during the week and talk about miniatures or comics or whatever tabletop game was coming out. He didn't make an impression on me one way or the other. Then one day he stopped coming in. My female employee, we'll call her Fiona, told me that Mr. Magic was hurt really bad at work and he had asked her to make his purchases while he was in the hospital. I didn't think too much about it. Fast forward to about 6 months later, Mr. Magic comes into the store and he's in a wheelchair. His girlfriend is with them. We'll call her Gigi. Now, full transparency, I had a huge crush on Gigi. I would gush like an idiot around her and spend way too much time explaining some inane thing she'd ask about just to be talking her up. She is probably one of the most intelligent women I've ever met, funny and beautiful to boot. Mr. Magic had to have noticed, but he never said anything about it, and after he was in a wheelchair, I spent a little more time talking to him. It turns out he was a really cool guy, led an amazing life, was well liked by the other customers that came into my store. After his injury, I noticed him coming in more frequently since he wasn't able to work. He was always with his girlfriend because he could no longer drive himself, and we sort of became friends. I went to visit him at his home a couple of times. It was a modest place, but you could tell everything in it was high quality. He had a gaming room and a video game arcade in part of the house. One day while I was there, my employee Fiona showed up at his house, came in with her own key, and went into his room and came out wearing different clothes. It threw me off, so I asked what the deal was and found out that Mr. Magic was dating his girlfriend, Gigi, and my employee at the same time, and they were open about it. A couple of days later, when Gigi came into the store with Mr. Magic, I tentatively broached the subject with Gigi, and she not only confirmed, but even told me they were trying to find a way to make it official between the three of them. That's when the jealousy kicked in. Mr. Magic was a nice guy, and he wasn't ugly or anything, but I just couldn't for the life of me figure out how this guy, even before he was in a wheelchair, could land two of the most beautiful and intelligent women I had ever met at the same time. And they wanted to be sister-wives with the guy. I kept it to myself, of course, and life carried on like this for about 18 more months. Then, the fuck-up happened. I was having a pretty shitty week at the store. One employee had quit without notice, and Fiona had taken some time off in advance to focus on school. I had some temporary help, but this guy was an idiot and could do little more than bag comics and put things on the shelf. During this time, I had quite a few customers try to haggle me down in price on my merchandise. I don't know what was going on, but it seemed like every other customer wanted some kind of discount. Then Mr. Magic came in. He had ordered some new stuff for a game he played. While he was ordering them, he and I were talking, and he asked, Since I'm buying so many of these, is there a chance I could get a better price on them? Full disclosure, he had ordered 10 cases of stuff. I was charging him full retail plus my markup. There's plenty of wiggle room for me to give him a discount of some kind. I could have given him 40% off and still walked away with a profit. Also, it should be noted, if he hadn't been ordering these 10 cases, I would never have had this stock in my store to begin with. It was basically free money. Instead of giving him a discount, I yelled at him in front of about half a dozen other customers. You're a fucking asshole. Are you seriously asking me for a discount? What is with you people and your discounts? Do you think I'm running a charity here? I have to make money to pay the bills here. And it went on like that for about 5 minutes. Him just sitting there in his wheelchair looking at me while I piled on every complaint about shitty customers that came to mind. I don't know what came over me, but I felt like I had some small measure of power over this guy, and my jealousy wouldn't let me abate my temper. After I took a breath and stepped back, that's when I knew I'd fucked up. Everyone was staring at me. One person had their phone out, recording. Fiona had walked in at some point and watched the tirade unfolding. Every time Gigi had tried to will Mr. Magic away, he would just gently put his hand on hers and stop her. He didn't say a word the whole time I was losing my shit. Not a single word. Then, as if nothing had happened, he said, "Okay, my man. My bad for asking. I didn't know you felt so strongly about it. Here, let me pay for my order and give me a call when the stuff comes in." I was completely flummoxed by his reaction, but I finished the transaction and he paid my asking price before leaving with Gigi and Fiona. Fiona followed him out and she came back a few minutes later to buy a couple things for herself. She acted like nothing had happened and I tried to give her a feeble apology. She said, "Don't worry about it. He's not going to, so you shouldn't." That was the last time I saw Mr. Magic in person. His order came in about 5 days later. Gigi and Fiona came in to pick up his order, and about a week after that, Fiona told me she wasn't coming back after her scheduled time off. I noticed a couple weeks later that for the first time in years, I had a downward trend in profit for the month. The following month was worse. Typically, I would order certain games or comics because they were in high demand, and I'd have to reorder them twice a month. This time the stuff I had ordered at the beginning of the month was still sitting on the shelf. Since I was spending more time at the store, I started to notice that some of my regulars were becoming irregulars, and I got a chance to have my accountant walk me through the books. That's when I noticed it. Throughout the month, there would be cash purchases ranging about $300 to $500 3 times a week, usually on Tuesdays, which I didn't work on, and Saturdays and Sundays, which I also didn't work on. So I reached out to Fiona and asked her about it, since it looked like those were usually the times when she worked. I started asking about the transactions, and she quickly said, "Oh yeah, that was Mr. Magic. He spent $1,200 to $1,500 a week there by himself. Basically every week since I started, which was like since you opened the store, right?" I could literally feel my heart hit my stomach on the way to my knees. I asked Fiona if he had ever asked to use her employee discount. She promptly said no, but that the money she typically did spend there, $800 to $200 a week, was usually given to her by Mr. Magic. But wait, it gets worse. The 3rd month after the incident, one of my regulars comes in who hadn't been in for a while. I started talking with him and asked if he knew where everyone had gone. My regular Magic the Gathering group had dwindled down to about 4 guys coming in, when up to this point it had been at a group of at least 50. My miniatures players hadn't been in to play in almost 5 weeks, and the pool boxes were about to be cleaned out because more than 2/3 of my regular comic subscribers just stopped showing up. That's when he tells me, "Yeah, about that. You know Mr. Magic, right? Someone shared the video of you berating him on our Facebook group, and comic book store owner that isn't you offered him a 15% discount for life. Since Mr. Magic started going there, they set up miniature tables and started hosting card and board games. Everyone is going there now." I barely paid rent that month. The following month, I didn't make rent, and the month after that, it was official. I had to close up shop. 2 months after that, I literally moved back into my parents' house. I went over the books as far back as I could, and in the course of the previous 5 years, it looked like Mr. Magic had spent over $325,000 at my shop by himself. He never was flashy or flaunted his wealth or anything, but he certainly spent more than enough to cover my lease and utilities. I bring this all up because yesterday I ran into Mr. Magic at a local taco joint. He was walking around and you'd never be able to tell he had been in a wheelchair. Gigi was with them, but it's Mrs. Magic now. She's still gorgeous and charming. They were picking up a craving for Fiona, Mrs. Fiona, maybe? Since she was at home pregnant with her and Mr. Magic's second child. We talked a bit about the pandemic, how some local businesses were hit hard. I brought up that I had heard one of the local shops survived because of the pandemic. I heard that one of the local shops survived the pandemic because they got bankrolled by a customer that didn't want to see them close due to hardships. Gigi gave a giggle at that, and Mr. Magic tapped the side of his nose and winked at me, Santa Claus style. I died inside. Then I got to watch them drive away in a brand new 2021 Bronco First Edition while I'm still driving the same car I did the last time I saw Mr. Magic. After they left, I sat there in my car thinking about this colossal fuck up. I swear I was cry eating my tacos. Oof. Okay, that was a long one. I really need to learn how to edit better so I don't have to take things in one long take. But if you think it's over, it's not. There's an edit. And I read the edit last night, and it's still hilarious. I still live with my parents because after all this happened, I got a job at a game store in a nearby town. Once my boss found out that it was me that treated Mr. Magic so badly, he fired me. To this day, he lives with his parents. He apparently is back in school. But, holy shit, you have everything in here. It is insane. It is a pro-revenge story told from the dude who got the revenge on. Who was revenged on. So, I saw this. I saw the extra long tag on today I fucked up. I was like, I wonder what this is about. And I read it, and I died inside because holy shit, what happened? And me, I always want to know if there's any other story to this. So I always go to the comments, and specifically, I went into his post history to read his comments. And it turns out that this guy who got this shop because his parents helped pay for it, then lost the shop because he was an absolute asshole to his whale, is upset because Mr. Magic is from a trust fund. And I'm sorry, but your parents helped you start your business. You fucked it up. A lot of people don't believe that the story is true, but I mean, if you've ever been part of the gaming community, you know how intense it can be. But what really got to me was some of the comments were from clearly women who were pointing out that he was basically harassing Gigi. And he blew up. Like, okay, they were being very short and blunt with him, but I feel like it's warranted. I mean, you just heard the entire fucking story. But he went from, how dare you call me a sexual predator? That what they never said anything about predation. They just pointed out that the language he was using in describing Gigi and Fiona, the way that he talked about how he had a huge crush on Gigi, and the commentary that he's been saying about other women that he slept with but he can't maintain a long-term relationship, all of that stuff, it points to him being overbearing, potentially harassing. And I got dug into the conversation there because it's like men were piling on the women, calling him out about this, and I'm just sitting here like, yet we don't know the situation from Gigi. Sure, she may not have cared at all because she may have been absolutely secure in her position as Mr. Magic's girlfriend, now wife, but dude. So it reminded me that I've actually had a few times where I was made uncomfortable by men, which is interesting because when I look on my past, there's very, very few times I would say that I've ever had untoward interest directed towards me by cis men. And one of the times was a very similar situation. I was looking at a tabletop book in a comic shop up in Illinois. I loved this comic shop. It was actually tied to a candy store, and the candy store would deliver food like nachos and shit to the gaming room. Fantastic setup. I still miss it. But we were in the store part of the comic and gaming store, the local gaming shop. And I was looking at Vampire the Requiem. If you don't know what Vampire the Requiem is, it is basically the second edition of a World of Darkness book, which World of Darkness is a whole gaming system. They use, I believe they use D10s over D20s, and it's a lot of fun. I really love the second edition stuff because they took out a lot of the bloat and they made it so that you could play with the different modules together, because there's all sorts. There's vampires, changelings, werewolves, regular ass people who are monster hunters. My favorite has to be Geist the Sin Eaters because that's ghosts. And guys, I fucking love ghosts. I'll get into it one day. But I was looking at Vampire the Requiem. Full disclosure, the first edition is called Vampire the Masquerade. I hate Vampire the Masquerade. And it is almost entirely due to the fandom around it. You want me to talk about that sometime, please let me know, because I have emotions. Anyway, this dude comes over. He noticed that I was looking at Vampire the Requiem, and was like, hey, that's the second edition. Vampire the Masquerade is better. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I prefer this one. And he proceeded to talk to me like he was a living Wikipedia. I'm using that terminology very carefully because the original poster of what I just read clarified when he was gushing to Gigi that he was a living Wikipedia at her. I don't think the guy that cornered me knew that he blocked off my exits or that he was standing uncomfortably close to me. I don't think he knew that I was uncomfortable, but I was. I ended up leaving the shop as soon as I could, and I waited until he left to go back inside. And I used that experience to try and explain how men can oftentimes not know the exact reaction that they're having on women, or the effect they're having on women. That women are socialized from a very young age to be distrustful of men. But yeah, that got all the men angry at me. But my favorite response was calling out the fact that I mentioned that I was a trans man. I literally used that as a disclosure because y'all know my Reddit profile is full of trans mask shit. And I wanted it to be clear, hey, I'm a trans guy. So I've kind of been on both sides of the coin. And this other person is like, it's irrelevant. I don't care that you're MTF. Dude, I'm not MTF. If you're actively talking to a trans person, how about you Google some basic shit on the same device that you're using to talk to me? But no, the original poster, in my head I've been calling him Nick, and I have no idea why. But in my head, Nick, he doesn't seem to fully get it yet. Because even after he saw Mr. Magic and Gigi again, he still didn't apologize. Still was unsure about apologizing. Was still very defensive about stuff, and still was clearly not over the women, was not over what's happened. He's sorry for himself. And I don't know. I think he's gonna fuck it up again. I'm really hoping he updates saying that he like texted or called Mr. Magic, because yeah, he knows where Mr. Magic lives, and he also knows where he also had the phone number, and apparently it's not been changed. So why hasn't he reached out? Why is he such an idiot? He's admitted he's a terrible business owner because he was also gave himself 3 days off a week. Oh my god. Talk about entitled. And I'm gonna leave it with the fact that a lot of people didn't believe this story because it sounded like Mr. Magic was spending entirely too much money there. Like you're spending $1,200 a week. And my entire thought process is he's probably a miniature painter, so he chose to spend a little more money up front to start the business by buying the miniatures from a local store instead of online. And probably because he doesn't actually care about any profit because he's a trust fund baby. So he would drop money to buy all this stuff and buy collectibles and everything else. And it was like, you can drop a lot of money in nerd culture. So, anyway, that's it from me today. It's official. I'm bipolar, y'all. I look forward to being medicated. I'll let y'all know about how the medication goes. I feel like these vlog entries are a fantastic way not only to make me feel productive, but they are a great way to be sort of a audio journal. I mean, it's not really what I wanted to do with my YouTube channel, and I'm shocked that I'm having as much interaction as I've had. Like, I currently am bouncing around between 35 and 36 subscribers consistently. But it makes me happy to know that people are vibing with what I'm saying. And honestly, even if I never grow past 35 subscribers, I'm going to keep doing this. It makes me a little happier just to be able to put this out in the world. And one day, if I do ever manage to adopt, I can show my children this and be like, look, your dad was a fucking idiot. You want to know how much of a fucking idiot? He made video journals over Minecraft footage. And he talked to people about printmaking and trans rights and mushrooms growing out of the carpet. And people responded to it. I don't know. I guess I'm just full of whist right now because I finally know what's wrong with me. But yeah, that's it. Stay hydrated, y'all. Seriously, reading all of that in one go was apparently a lot for my throat. I don't talk a lot. But stay hydrated, like, comment, subscribe, whatever, YouTube shit. And I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Bye.